The humid Los Angeles evening of September 28, 1987, hung over the Memorial Coliseum like a velvet curtain stretched tight with anticipation, while inside the massive stadium, 101,000 souls created a human symphony of whispers, cheers, and collective heartbeats that seemed to pulse through the concrete structure like electricity through copper wire. This was supposed to be Michael Jackson's night, the final concert of his Bad World Tour's North American leg. But rumors have been circulating since sunrise that something unprecedented was about to unfold, something that would transform a farewell concert into a moment that would be etched into music history with the permanence of carved stone. The stage stretched across the stadium floor like a spaceship that had landed in the center of human dreams, its silver surfaces catching and reflecting the early evening light that filtered through the Coliseum's upper reaches. Giant video screens flanked the performance area, currently displaying swirling patterns of purple and silver that seemed to move with their own mysterious rhythm, while the sound system hummed with the barely contained power of technology pushed to its absolute limits. The air itself seemed to vibrate with possibility, thick with the collective energy of people who had traveled from across the continent to witness what they believed would be simply another Michael Jackson concert, unaware that they were about to become witnesses to something that would redefine the very concept of musical rivalry. Michael stood in his dressing room beneath the stadium, his reflection multiplied infinitely in the mirrors that surrounded him as his team made final adjustments to the iconic red leather jacket that had become synonymous with the Bad Tour. His face showed the focused intensity of someone preparing for battle, but there was something different in his expression tonight, a mixture of excitement and nervous energy that suggested he knew this evening would be unlike any other performance in his career. The white sequin glove lay on a makeup table beside him, catching the fluorescent light like captured starlight, while outside his dressing room, security guards spoke in urgent whispers about the unexpected developments that had been unfolding throughout the afternoon. The challenge had arrived at precisely 3 o'clock that afternoon, delivered not through official channels or management representatives, but in the most audacious manner imaginable. Prince Rogers Nelson himself had appeared at the Coliseum stage entrance, wearing a purple velvet suit that seemed to absorb and radiate light simultaneously, his guitar case slung across his shoulder like the weapon of a musical warrior, his eyes holding that unmistakable combination of confidence and mischief that had made him one of the most unpredictable forces in popular music. The security guards had initially tried to turn him away, assuming he was an impersonator or overzealous fan, until he had quietly spoken his name and watched their faces transform with recognition and disbelief. "I need to speak with Michael," Prince had said, his voice carrying the distinctive Minneapolis accent wrapped around words that seemed to contain layers of meaning beneath their simple surface. "Tell him that His Royal Highness requests an audience with the self-proclaimed king of pop." The message had been delivered to Michael's team with the careful precision of diplomats handling international negotiations, and the response had come back within minutes. Michael would see Prince, but only if he was willing to discuss his visit in front of the entire production crew, ensuring that whatever transpired would have witnesses. The meeting had taken place on the empty stage, with Prince standing center stage holding his guitar while Michael approached from the wings, the two men facing each other across the expanse of polished floor like gunslingers in a musical western. The crew members gathered around the stage's perimeter had held their collective breath, understanding that they were about to witness either the beginning of a legendary collaboration or the escalation of the most famous rivalry in music history into something approaching open warfare. "Michael," Prince had said, his fingers absently stroking the strings of his guitar in a way that created haunting harmonics that seemed to float through the empty stadium like ghosts of unplayed songs. "The people deserve to see what happens when innovation meets tradition, when Minneapolis meets Gary, Indiana, when purple meets red leather. They deserve to see us together, not as rivals manufactured by magazine headlines, but as artists who respect each other's gifts enough to share a stage." The silence that had followed Prince's words was profound, broken only by the distant sound of fans gathering outside the stadium and the gentle whisper of air conditioning systems working to cool the massive space. Michael had studied Prince's face, searching for signs of mockery or manipulation, but finding instead something that looked remarkably like genuine artistic curiosity, a desire to explore what might happen when two of the most innovative musicians of their generation decided to create something together rather than in competition. "What did you have in mind?" Michael had asked, his voice carrying that distinctive softness that became more pronounced when he was truly intrigued by an idea rather than simply being polite. Prince had smiled then, an expression that transformed his usually mysterious demeanor into something almost boyish, and had begun to play a melody on his guitar that was hauntingly beautiful, a progression of chords that seemed to contain elements of both their musical styles while belonging fully to neither. "Something new," he had said as his fingers continued to move across the strings. "Something that's never existed before and might never exist again. Something that honors what we've both brought to music while showing the world what we might accomplish together." The decision to include this unexpected collaboration in the evening's performance had been made with the kind of split-second intuition that separates great artists from merely competent ones. Michael's tour director had initially objected, pointing out that the show's choreography, lighting, and sound systems had been designed around a carefully planned setlist that left no room for improvisation. But Michael had insisted, understanding that some opportunities come only once and must be seized regardless of the practical complications they create. As the sun set behind the Los Angeles skyline and the stadium began to fill with the eager energy of 101,000 people expecting to witness Michael Jackson's final Los Angeles performance of the tour, neither the audience nor the production crew could have imagined the surprise that awaited them. The concert began as planned, with Michael emerging from beneath the stage in a cloud of silver smoke while the opening notes of his planned set list filled the Coliseum with sound that seemed to make the very air pulse with rhythm. For the first hour, the performance unfolded exactly as rehearsed, with Michael moving through his choreographed routines with the precision and passion that had made him the most celebrated live performer of his generation. The crowd sang along with every word, danced in their seats, and created waves of applause that seemed to build upon themselves until the entire stadium vibrated with collective appreciation. But those who knew Michael well could see something different in his performance tonight, an extra layer of energy that suggested he was building towards something unprecedented. The moment arrived during what should have been Michael's final song before the encore, as the last notes of his performance faded and the crowd began the rhythmic clapping that traditionally summoned performers back to the stage for their closing numbers. Instead of disappearing into the wings as expected, Michael remained center stage, his red leather jacket catching the spotlights as he raised his microphone to address the crowd directly. "Tonight," he said, his voice carrying clearly through the stadium sound system despite speaking barely above a whisper, "I want to share something with you that I've never shared before. Music isn't about competition. It isn't about who sells more records or who has more #1 hits. Music is about connection, about the magic that happens when artists respect each other enough to create something together that neither could accomplish alone." The crowd's energy shifted perceptibly, sensing that they were about to witness something unscripted, something that would make this evening different from every other concert they had ever attended. The video screens that flanked the stage began displaying swirling patterns of purple and silver that seemed to dance together like complementary colors finally finding harmony, while the lighting shifted to create an atmosphere of intimate anticipation despite the massive scale of the venue. "Tonight," Michael continued, his voice growing stronger with each word, "I have the honor of sharing this stage with someone whose artistry has challenged me to be better, whose innovation has pushed all of us to explore new possibilities, whose music has proven that there's room in this world for every kind of genius." The first guitar notes floated across the stadium like butterflies made of sound, that same haunting melody Prince had played during their afternoon meeting, but now amplified through the Coliseum's speakers and enhanced with harmonies that seemed to emerge from the air itself. Prince appeared from the opposite side of the stage, his purple suit now augmented with silver accents that caught the light in ways that made him seem to glow from within, his guitar creating music that complemented rather than competed with the established rhythm of Michael's show. The roar that erupted from the 101,000 people in attendance was unlike anything the Coliseum had ever contained, a sound that was part scream of surprise, part cry of joy, part acknowledgement that they were witnessing something that transcended ordinary entertainment to become a moment of pure artistic magic. People throughout the stadium stood on their seats, reached for each other, wiped tears from their eyes as they realized they were seeing two of the most influential musicians of their generation choosing collaboration over competition, harmony over discord. What happened next would be analyzed by music critics for decades, studied by performers seeking to understand the alchemy of spontaneous collaboration. But those who were present would always insist that no amount of academic analysis could capture the pure emotional truth of the moment when Michael and Prince began to create music together in real time, their voices weaving together like threads in a tapestry that belonged neither to Minneapolis nor to Gary, Indiana, but to someplace between. Then where artistic differences became artistic strengths. They didn't perform each other's existing songs, didn't rely on familiar melodies to bridge the gap between their different styles. Instead, they created something entirely new, something that emerged from their interaction with each other and with the energy of the crowd. A musical conversation that unfolded like improvised poetry set to rhythms that seemed to pulse with the heartbeat of the city itself. Prince's guitar provided the foundation, complex progressions that demonstrated his mastery of the instrument, while Michael's voice soared above and around the melody, adding layers of harmony and rhythm that transformed Prince's musical ideas into something larger than either artist could have achieved alone. If this story moves you, don't forget to like this video and subscribe to the channel for more incredible stories about the moments when rivalry transforms into respect and competition becomes collaboration. The performance lasted nearly 20 minutes, though time seemed to have lost all meaning for those who were present. The two artists moved around each other on stage like dancers who had been rehearsing together for years. Prince's more reserved stage presence creating a perfect counterpoint to Michael's explosive energy, their different approaches to performance complementing rather than conflicting with each other. At one point, Michael began to moonwalk around Prince as he played guitar, the visual representation of smooth movement circling around complex musical innovation, creating a metaphor for their entire artistic relationship that was more eloquent than any interview or magazine article had ever managed to express. But perhaps the most powerful moment came when both artists stopped singing and allowed the crowd to take over, 101,000 voices joining together in a wordless harmony that seemed to rise from the deepest places in human hearts, a sound that spoke to the universal desire for connection, for understanding, for the kind of unity that music makes possible when it transcends the boundaries of individual ego and commercial competition. Prince and Michael stood side by side in the center of the stage, listening to this spontaneous choir, their faces showing expressions of wonder and gratitude that revealed the human beings behind their carefully constructed public personas. As the impromptu collaboration drew to its natural conclusion, Prince removed a small object from his pocket, a purple guitar pick that he had been carrying since his first professional performance years earlier in Minneapolis. Without speaking, he handed the pick to Michael, who accepted it with the reverence of someone receiving a sacred relic. The symbolism was immediately understood by everyone present. This wasn't just the end of a performance. It was the transformation of a rivalry into a mutual recognition of artistic worth, the replacement of competition with collaboration, the proof that there was room in the world of popular music for different approaches to excellence. Michael held the purple pick high above his head so that everyone in the stadium could see it, and the roar of approval that greeted this gesture seemed to shake the very foundations of the Coliseum. Then, in a move that surprised even Prince, Michael reached into his own pocket and withdrew his famous white sequin glove, the signature accessory that had become synonymous with his performances around the world. He handed the glove to Prince, who accepted it with a smile that transformed his usually mysterious expression into something warm and genuine. The two artists embraced then, not the brief, formal embrace of professional colleagues, but the longer, more meaningful embrace of mutual respect, of artistic recognition, of human connection that transcends the artificial boundaries created by industry competition and media narratives. The stadium erupted in applause that lasted for nearly 10 minutes. People throughout the venue understanding that they had witnessed something that would never be repeated, a moment when two masters of their craft had chosen to celebrate each other rather than compete, to build bridges rather than maintain walls. In the days that followed, bootleg recordings of that evening would become some of the most sought-after musical artifacts in history, traded among collectors and studied by musicians seeking to understand how spontaneous collaboration could create something more powerful than carefully planned competition. Music critics would struggle to categorize what they had heard, unable to fit the collaboration into existing frameworks of analysis, ultimately concluding that some artistic moments transcend genre, style, and even individual artistic identity to become something entirely new. But the real impact of that evening was more personal and immediate. Fans who had attended the concert would speak for years about how witnessing that collaboration had changed their understanding not just of music, but of human possibility. They had seen two people at the very pinnacle of their profession choose respect over rivalry, had witnessed the transformation of competition into creation, had experienced proof that the most powerful performances happen when artists choose to lift each other up rather than tear each other down. Prince kept Michael's glove in a place of honor in his Paisley Park studio, where it served as a reminder that artistic innovation often comes from unexpected collaborations, from the willingness to step outside established patterns and explore what might happen when different approaches to creativity come together in service of something larger than individual achievement. Michael carried Prince's purple guitar pick with him to every subsequent performance, a small token that reminded him of the evening when musical rivalry had transformed into musical magic. Years later, when music historians looked back on that September evening in Los Angeles, they would identify it as a turning point not just in the relationship between two extraordinary artists, but in the culture of popular music itself. The collaboration had demonstrated that the manufactured rivalries that drove music industry marketing were less powerful than the authentic connections that could form when artists recognized and honored each other's contributions to their shared art form. The purple guitar pick and the white sequin glove eventually found their way into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, displayed side by side as symbols of the evening when Prince and Michael Jackson proved that the most memorable performances happen not when artists try to outshine each other, but when they find ways to make each other's light burn more brightly. But the real monument to that evening lived on in the memories of everyone who was present, in the understanding that they had witnessed something that transcended entertainment to become a lesson in the power of choosing collaboration over competition, respect over rivalry, and shared humanity over individual ego. The 101,000 fans who filled the Los Angeles Memorial Coliseum that night had expected to see a concert, but they had experienced something much more profound, a demonstration that the most powerful performances happen when artists choose to celebrate each other rather than compete with each other, when individual excellence is used not to diminish others, but to create something beautiful together, when a stage becomes not a battleground, but a place where different kinds of genius can meet and create magic that neither could accomplish alone.